Senator Schatz.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Chairman Powell, thank you for your service. Thank you for your stewardship. PG&E, California's largest utility, filed bankruptcy last month, partly as a result of liability costs from climate-related disasters. The damage from 2017 and 2018 wildfires exceeded $30 billion, more than PG&E's assets and insurance coverage combined. Climate risks threaten many sectors of our economy: real estate, agriculture, fisheries, industries with extensive supply chains. They're all at risk. Take coastal real estate as just one example. The U.S. government currently estimates that storms, floods, erosion, rising sea level now threaten approximately $1 trillion in national wealth held in coastal real estate. According to Freddie Mac, quote, "Some of the varied impacts of climate change may not be insurable. More than 300,000 coastal homes are at risk of chronic inundation by 2045, a time frame that falls well within the time frame of the 30-year mortgage. These properties are worth about $117 billion and contribute nearly $1.5 billion towards the property tax base. Banks, insurance companies, other financial institutions are all exposed to these risks, and that's why the Bank of England recently announced that it is planning to include the impact of climate change in its bank stress test next year." So here's a simple question. It's not a gotcha question. Do you agree that climate change creates financial risks for the individual financial institutions and for our financial system as a whole?
So let me say we don't formally or directly include climate change in our supervision, but we do actually require financial institutions, particularly those who are more exposed to natural disasters and that kind of thing. We do require them to understand and manage that particular operating risk. So, for example, if you're a bank on the southern coast of Florida and you're subject to hurricanes, we definitely require you to have plans and risk management things in place to deal with that sorts of things. So you would pick up natural disasters and that kind of thing which are associated with climate change.
Do you think your processes and your staff and your sort of approach to this, which has been built properly over many, many years and pursuant to the statute, do you think you're moving fast enough to acknowledge the accelerating risks of climate change as over the last 2 or 3 years? Do you think there's room for you to do a scrub of whether or not you're fulfilling your statutory mandate? Because I get that you're supposed to pick up any risks related to natural disasters. The question is whether you've really loaded in the latest information from the scientific community to go back to these banks, to go back to REITs, to go back to lenders who have either stranded assets or assets in the coastal area or whose supply chain is particularly dependent on a certain kind of weather pattern which is not materializing anymore. Do you think you're doing enough in this space? Or let me phrase it another way. Are you confident that you're doing enough in this space?
You know, it's a little bit like cyber risk. You know, should you ever be confident that you're doing enough in that space? So I think I think we're open, we're clear-eyed about the nature of coastal risks and natural disaster risks and that kind of thing. But it's a fair question, and we'll go back and look at it again.
Could you please respond in writing as it relates to this specific question? The Bank of England and 29 central banks and bank supervisors from around the world are moving towards incorporating climate risk into their supervision of financial institutions. You know that another part of the Federal Reserve's mandate is to engage with its counterparts abroad to address systemic risks. Do you think the Federal Reserve should be engaging with its international counterparts on this question?
So we are in those meetings. We're involved in those bodies. We don't, as I mentioned, we don't formally take climate change into account in our risks, but I think that the consequences are things that we do supervise for.
I just think that you've been extraordinary in terms of your ability to withstand political pressure and look at the data and do what's right for the health of the economy. I don't want this to be an exception. I understand that talking about climate change is fraught with partisan peril and will attract the ire of a certain category of people and institutions. But your job is to measure risk, and I would submit that you're not measuring that risk sufficiently. One final question, if you'll indulge me, Chairman Crapo, and that is, has anybody either directly or indirectly communicated with you about rates from the White House?
It's kind of a broad question.
It is a broad question.
You know, I don't really talk about. It's probably not appropriate to discuss my private conversations with other government officials, any other government officials. I would say I'm completely committed to conducting monetary policy in a way that's non-political, in a way that serves all of the American public. You know, and I'm very comfortable and confident that that's exactly what the Fed's going to do.
Thank you.
Senator Reid.
Mr. Chairman, thank you.